All right, today we're talking about something super critical. What do you actually do when your cloud setup is under attack? We're going to build an action plan. I mean, let's be real, the cloud is here to stay. If the last few years taught us anything, it's how much we rely on it, right? Remote work, digital everything, it's all powered by the cloud. And if your business lives there, you absolutely have to know how to defend your turf. And that's the million-dollar question, right? Is your team actually ready? Because it's really not a matter of if you get hit, it's when. And having a solid, practiced plan, well, that's the difference between a small headache and a total disaster. So that's what we're going to dig into. Okay, so first things first. Before you can even think about building a plan, you've got to know who's on the hook for what. In the cloud, this all comes down to something called the shared security model. So think of it like this. There are basically three main flavors of cloud services. You've got IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. That's like renting the raw computing power. Then there's PaaS, platform as a service, which gives you a whole environment to build your own stuff. And finally, SaaS, software as a service, which is probably what you use every day. Ready-to-go apps. And this chart here really nails it. It shows you exactly how that responsibility shifts. See, way over on the left, with your own servers on-premise, you're responsible for everything. But as you move to the right, from IaaS to PaaS and then to SaaS, you see the provider taking on more and more of the load. With IaaS, you're still managing your own apps, data, and the operating system. But by the time you get to SaaS, the provider is handling almost the whole shebang. And here are some real-world examples to make it click. On the right, that's your IaaS, the basic building blocks, servers and storage. In the middle, you've got PaaS, which throws in the operating systems and tools. And then over on the left is SaaS, with stuff you definitely know, like Office 365. You're just using the software. You're not worrying about the servers it's running on. But here is the absolute key takeaway. No matter which of these models you're using, you are never completely off the hook for security. Even with SaaS, you're still responsible for your data, your accounts, who has access, all of that. The provider secures their cloud infrastructure, but you have to secure what you do in the cloud. That's a huge distinction. Okay, so now we know what our job is. The next step, we need a plan. And for that, we're going to use a really solid, proven playbook, the 6-step framework from the SANS Institute. So here's what that looks like. It's a 6-stage process, and it flows in a really logical way. You start with preparation, then when something kicks off, you move to identification. From there, it's containment, eradication, recovery, and then finally reporting. And see those arrows? Sometimes you might have to loop back a step, but the whole point is to guide you from a calm state, right through the chaos of a crisis and back to normal. Let's just run through those one more time so they stick. Preparation, what you do before the bad stuff happens. Identification, realizing, we've got a problem. Containment, stopping the damage from spreading. Eradication, getting the threat out for good. Recovery, getting everything back online. And reporting, figuring out what happened so it doesn't happen again. Let's zoom in on that identification stage for a second. This is how it actually works behind the scenes. Your system is constantly pulling in live data from your network, right? And it's comparing that against what it knows is normal. Historical data, established patterns. The moment it spots something weird, an anomaly, it fires off an alert. That alert pops up on a dashboard, and that's the signal for your security team to jump in and investigate. Okay, so you identified the threat. Now it's time for containment and eradication. And this is where you have to move fast. We're talking about things like immediately isolating the infected machines, maybe rerouting traffic to a clean site. Then you've got to get rid of the threat itself. That means working with your cloud provider, removing the actual malware, and, this is so important, revoking any stolen keys or passwords and creating brand new ones. All right, so you've got your defensive plan. You know the steps. But a good defense means you have to understand the offense. What are you actually up against? What does a cloud attack look like from the other side? To really get inside their heads, we're going to look at an attacker's playbook. We'll use some common tactics from the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which basically breaks down the anatomy of a breach, step by step. So every single attack, no matter how complex, starts with one thing: initial access. They just need to get a foot in the door. And honestly, one of the most common ways they do this is shockingly simple. They just trick a real user into letting them in. Just look at this. It looks exactly like the real Microsoft 365 login page, doesn't it? An employee gets a phishing email with a link, they click it, they type in their username and password, and boom, game over. The attacker has the keys to the kingdom. The only thing that gives it away is the URL up in the address bar. And let's be honest, who really checks that? They even went to the trouble of getting an SSL certificate, so you see that little green lock icon, making it feel totally safe. So once an attacker is in, their next move is to make sure they can stay in. They don't want to be a one-hit wonder. They want to set up shop. This is called establishing persistence, basically a secret way to keep their access even if the computer gets rebooted or someone finds the original compromised account. And this is a textbook example of how they do it. This screenshot shows you the list of programs that run automatically at startup. You see the normal stuff in there, Google, HP, McAfee, but look closer. See that suspicious one called Run CDF? And the manufacturer is unknown? That's the malware. It's hiding in plain sight, set to launch every single time the computer boots up. It's a permanent backdoor for the attacker. Okay, so they're in, and they can stay in. But often, that first account they steal doesn't have a lot of power. So the next logical step for the attacker is privilege escalation. They want to trade up from that low-level account to something with more juice, ideally a full-on administrator. This diagram lays out the two main ways they level up. There's horizontal escalation. That's moving sideways. You use one person's account to get into another person's account who has similar permissions. But the real jackpot is vertical escalation. That's climbing the ladder, going from a regular user all the way up to having admin or even kernel-level access. Once they do that, they pretty much own the whole system. So we've seen the defender's plan, and we've walked through the attacker's playbook. And the key to making your defense actually work against their offense, well, it's not really about what you do in the heat of the moment. It's about what you did long before. It all comes down to one single thing: preparation. You know, this quote really just sums it all up perfectly. Cloud security is a shared responsibility, and if you don't take care of the basics, you can get hurt. Your cloud provider gives you amazing, powerful tools, but they can't stop a user from clicking a bad link. They can't stop an admin from accidentally leaving a server wide open to the internet. Those basics, that's on you. And that's what brings us right back to the beginning. Understanding how attackers think, knowing exactly what you're responsible for in the cloud, having the right tools ready to go, that's not stuff you figure out during a crisis. That is the preparation. It's the first and, honestly, the most important step in your entire incident response plan. So knowing the attacker's playbook tells you how to prepare, and knowing your responsibilities tells you what to prepare. With all of that in mind, I'll leave you with this question. Looking at your own setup, what's the very first gap you're going to fix in your cloud defense?